Daniel came home smelling like ambition. Not his own, of course. He'd borrowed someone else's. A new cologne, something sharp and citrusy, expensive enough to signal a crisis. He tossed his keys into the bowl by the door, loosened his tie like he'd just returned from saving the world, and said, "Rough day. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." I looked up from my laptop, pretending to review quarterly reports for a client, though I was really tracking numbers that didn't belong to work, the household expenses, the ones he used to split with me. Recently, his share had developed a case of selective amnesia. "Mentoring again?" I asked lightly, closing the screen halfway. His shoulders stiffened, barely a flicker, the kind of twitch you'd miss if you weren't trained to see patterns for a living. "Yeah, Julia's going through a tough time," he said, reaching for a glass of water like he'd rehearsed the line. Julia. The name floated through the room like perfume that refused to fade. I'd heard it twice that week, once on speakerphone, once during his client meeting that coincidentally ended at a restaurant where wine was poured by candlelight. "That's sweet," I said. "You've always been so loyal." He smiled, not catching the sarcasm. Or maybe he did, but Daniel never confronted anything unpleasant directly. He'd just let charm do the heavy lifting. I used to admire that. Now it felt like living with an ad campaign that never ended. After he went upstairs to shower, I opened his jacket draped over the chair. Inside pocket, receipts. 2 of them. One for a dinner at the Oak, a place where the cheapest entree cost more than my dry cleaning bill. 2 glasses of wine. 2 entrees. 1 dessert. Strawberry tiramisu, which he hates. Julia loved it back in college. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my planner under the miscellaneous tab. I like things labeled. Order makes chaos visible. The next morning, he dressed better than usual. Navy suit, crisp white shirt, the tie I bought him 3 anniversaries ago, the one he wore once because it was too formal. Now it was suddenly appropriate for client lunches. I caught him glancing at himself in the hallway mirror, adjusting his hair. "You look nice," I said. "Meeting important people," he replied. "First impressions count." "Interesting how that works after 10 years, I murmured, mostly to the coffee mug. He didn't answer. By afternoon, the neighborhood was already buzzing. Lydia Price, the self-appointed mayor of gossip, accidentally stopped by with her dog. "Oh, Hannah, you poor thing," she began, voice dripping sympathy like syrup on pancakes. "I saw Daniel at the Oak last night. Such a romantic place. Who was that lady he was with? Looked familiar. Julia something." I smiled, because in suburbs like ours, silence is a weapon. "Oh, I'm sure it was business," I said. "Daniel's very devoted to his work." Lydia tilted her head. "Must be nice having a husband so attentive." "Yes," I said, sipping my coffee. "He's practically married to customer service." After she left, I sat by the window, watching her little dog tug her down the sidewalk. I imagined the story already traveling across the neighborhood, splitting and multiplying like gossip always does. By dinner, someone would claim I'd caught them in the act. By tomorrow, Julia would have moved in. People like Lydia love neat conclusions. They hate unfinished puzzles. By Thursday, Daniel's phone started living face down. His text alerts went silent. He wore new cologne again. This one darker, muskier, something meant to impress. He started using phrases like personal growth and emotional investment. And on Friday, while I was filing a client report, his voice drifted from the kitchen. "Julia, I told you, it's complicated. She doesn't understand." He didn't know I was in the next room. He didn't see me pause mid-keystroke, my hand steady, my breathing slower than usual. I could have walked in. I could have made a scene. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed, Friday, 4:17 p.m. Call with Julia. Emotional tone, intimate, Evidence, observable. That's what accountants do. We keep records. That night I served dinner as usual. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, glass of red wine. Daniel ate distractedly, scrolling through his phone under the table. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work stuff," he said. "Julia again?" He froze for half a second. "She's going through a rough divorce. I'm helping her restructure her portfolio." "Must be hard work," I said, balancing spreadsheets and feelings. He set the fork down. "You're overreacting." "Oh, I'm not reacting at all," I said lightly. "I'm just making observations. You know, facts, figures, behavioral trends." He sighed. "You wouldn't understand loyalty, Hannah." That one stung, though I didn't show it. Loyalty? I'd carried his bills through graduate school, covered rent when he switched jobs, supported his business expansion that mostly involved a golf club membership. Loyalty wasn't the problem. Selective amnesia was. After dinner, he went to the living room, turned on the game, and scrolled his phone again. I watched him from the doorway, the blue glow reflecting on his face. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. The next morning, while he showered, I opened his car trunk, pretending to look for my umbrella. There it was, a small gift box, gold ribbon slightly crooked. Inside, a bracelet, delicate rose gold, engraved to D, J. J for Julia, of course. My hands didn't shake. I just studied the engraving, the precision of it. Someone had taken time to carve that letter. Time, intention, money, Daniel's favorite trifecta. When he came out of the house, towel around his shoulders, I was smiling. "You left this in the car," I said, holding up the box. He blinked. "Oh, it's a client gift." "From or for?" He hesitated, then laughed nervously. "You're funny." "I try," I said. "Some of us have to keep things entertaining around here." He kissed my forehead, a reflex more than affection, and left for work. I watched his car disappear around the corner, the gold bracelet box still warm in my hand. At the office, my day unfolded with mechanical precision. Numbers never lie. People, however, make it an art form. During lunch, I logged into our shared bank account. Transfers. Small ones, recurring, always on Fridays. Rounded numbers, $400, $600, $800, always to a secondary card linked to his name. Daniel was careful, but not creative. He labeled the transactions business expenses. I checked my watch. 1:30 p.m. Julia's real estate office closed for lunch at noon. The Oak opened reservations at 1 countings. I didn't need to confirm where he was. By evening, he came home later than usual, smelling again of citrus ambition. "You're quiet," he said, hanging his coat. "Numbers keep me busy," I replied. "I told Julia you'd understand." "Oh, I do," I said. "Completely." He smiled, relieved, not realizing that understanding is more dangerous than suspicion. That weekend, Lydia hosted a barbecue. The neighborhood gathered like clockwork, lawns trimmed, smiles polished, secrets hidden behind sunglasses. Daniel played the charming husband, grilling burgers, laughing too loudly. I floated through conversations, wine in hand, observing. Lydia whispered something to Tessa, who gasped and glanced at me. I caught her eye, lifted my glass, and smiled. Later, as we packed up, Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "See? Everyone still loves us." "Of course they do," I said. "We're the perfect couple. Just look at us, balanced assets." He laughed, not hearing the irony. Sunday morning, he made pancakes, whistling. "You're in a good mood," I said. "Decided to stop feeling guilty about helping Julia," he said. "She needs me. She's not as strong as you." That sentence landed like a paper cut, small, invisible, irritatingly sharp. I leaned against the counter. "So, you're her savior now?" "Don't make it sound dramatic. She's struggling. I can't just abandon her." "And I suppose she's paying for your emotional labor?" He frowned. "You're being cynical." I'm being mathematical, I said. 2 people, 1 pattern, repetition equals intention. He looked puzzled, probably because emotional math wasn't his subject. That night, while he showered again, I drafted an email. No names, no drama, just facts. Attached, bank transfers, expense logs, and a short note suggesting a compliance check. Sent anonymously to his firm. Then I deleted every trace. By Monday, his tone shifted. Calls longer, silence heavier. At dinner, he said, "If something happens at work, hypothetically, you'll stand by me, right?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "That's what loyal people do." Tuesday came with tension. I could hear it in the way he slammed drawers, in how often he checked his phone. By evening, I was on the porch with tea when he came out, tie loosened, expression unreadable. "Hannah," he said carefully, "Julia needs me. I'm moving out for a bit." I looked up, blinking once. "Oh, she must be really struggling with her spreadsheets." He flinched at the tone but kept going. "It's temporary. You'll see someday this was the right thing." I nodded. "Of course." "You're not upset?" "Why would I be?" I said. "Let me help you pack." He stared at me, thrown off balance. He'd expected tears, maybe pleading. Instead, I smiled, calm and polite. Within an hour, his suitcases were in the car. I drove him there myself. Julia's house was neat, overly scented, the kind of home that tried too hard. She greeted us at the door in soft lighting and expensive perfume. Daniel carried the bags inside, while I lingered by the mailbox. "Thank you, Hannah," Julia said, too gracious to be sincere. "Of course," I replied. "Take good care of him. He's fragile around loyalty." As they disappeared inside, I slipped a white envelope into her mailbox. Bank statements neatly printed, labeled, and clipped. Evidence of Daniel's secret account, funded by her alimony. Back in my car, I adjusted the mirror. My reflection looked calm, almost detached. The streetlights painted everything gold and sharp. Driving home, I hummed to the rhythm of the tires, steady and precise. The same way numbers align when you finally find the missing value. By the time I parked, my phone buzzed with a message from Lydia. "Heard you dropped Daniel off at Julia's. You okay, honey?" I typed back, "Better than ever." Balance restored. Then I shut off the phone, poured a glass of wine, and looked out the window. For the first time in weeks, everything made sense. The math, finally, added up. He didn't text that night. I slept diagonally, one hand on the cool side of the bed, like a traveler enjoying an empty aisle. In the morning, I folded his usual towel back on the rack out of habit, then laughed at myself for keeping routines that no longer applied. Habit is a kind of superstition. Numbers help. I made a list. 1. Coffee. 2. Send a simple message to the firm's general compliance inbox with attachments. 3. Water the hydrangeas so Lydia sees me doing normal homeowner things and reports my stability to her committee of lawn chair philosophers. I wore a pale blue blouse to work that made people say, "You look well rested," which is suburban code for, "Are you secretly winning?" I answered emails, balanced a stubborn account, and at noon took a short walk around the block. The sun was bright, and a guy pushing a stroller smiled at me like we were actors in a commercial for tax software. At 1:10 p.m., my phone vibrated, unknown number. I let it ring out. Then an email. "We appreciate your concern. We take policy adherence seriously." That was it. No fireworks, no confetti, just the corporate equivalent of a raised eyebrow. I smiled at the screen and got back to work. When you drop a pebble in a pond, you don't chase the ripple. You wait. By late afternoon, the group chat Lydia runs under the cute tyrannical title Birchwood Neighbours, Community and Compassion lit up. Lydia. Saw Daniel's car at Julia's this morning. Did he move in? Hannah, dear, sending prayers. Tessa. Prayers and also quesadillas tonight if you need company. Unknown neighbour, probably the woman with the apricot nails who lives 2 streets over. Heard Julia sold a listing on Park. Celebratory dinner, maybe. I typed nothing. Silence tastes better when everyone else seasons the air with speculation. I got home and opened the windows. Air moved through the house like a new idea. I refreshed the flowers on the dining table and put his framed diploma in a drawer because the living room shelf didn't need to be a shrine. When I bent to slide the frame away, a paper fell. A printed menu from the oak, crumpled, the dessert section smudged by a damp thumb. Strawberry tiramisu circled. The universe loves callbacks. At 7, my phone buzzed. Julia's number, because some lines get saved by accident when you've once planned a surprise party together. Her text was brief. We need to talk. No emoji, no exclamation marks. She was a realtor. She knew how to make a message sound like a lock clicking. I put the phone face down and made pasta with garlic and butter, the kind of dinner that's therapy by scent. While it simmered, I stepped onto the porch. Birchwood at dusk is a postcard. Sprinklers ticking, kids dragging scooters inside, someone grilling something they'll pretend isn't from a marinade packet. I waved at Evan across the street, the neighbor with the quiet eyes and tidy garage. He lifted a hand like a polite semaphore. When I came back in, the phone had multiplied messages. Julia. Where did you get these statements? Julia again, a minute later. You had no right. Then a third. Call me. A fourth, 20 minutes later, more controlled. You could have asked. I stirred the pasta, set the table for one, and ate while reading a journal article about forensic accounting, because sometimes an old interest is a comfort. At 9, I rinsed dishes and put on a face mask that smelled like lavender. At 9:30, I climbed into bed and scrolled through vacation rentals I had no intention of booking. At 10, I turned off the lamp. In the morning, I woke to 4 missed calls from Daniel. 1 voicemail. Hannah, things got complicated. Call me. Complicated is what people say when they want sympathy without providing a receipt. I brewed coffee extra strong and watered the hydrangeas again, just to feed Lydia's narrative that I was coping by gardening. It worked. She appeared on the sidewalk, leashed poodle in tow, sunglasses big enough to count as witness protection. Hannah, darling, she called, already halfway through an apology I hadn't requested. You're handling all this with such grace, truly inspiring. I find a schedule helps, I said, misting the leaves like a woman in a detergent commercial. I saw a car at Julia's late last night, she continued. Not Daniel's. A lawyer, maybe. You can always tell by the cautious parallel parking. Maybe a brother, I said. Julia doesn't have a brother, she said quickly, then bit her lip, caught by her own eagerness. Well, I'm just around the corner if you need anything. I'll note that mentally, I said. At the office, the day wore a hushed tension. I didn't gossip. Accountants gossip less than people think, mostly because we know every story has a ledger attached. Mid-morning, my manager, a calm woman named Claire, who wears bracelets that tinkle like wind chimes, leaned into my cube. Quick client switch, she said. You okay with picking up a local firm for a short audit? They requested someone precise. Always precise, I said. She smiled. That's what I tell them. Precision isn't just numbers, it's tone. During lunch, I ate at my desk and wrote a new list. 1. Call the locksmith. 2. Change the streaming passwords. 3. Remove Daniel from the Warehouse Club membership so he can no longer buy luxury paper towels on my account. At 2, an email pinged from an address with the firm's domain that looked like it had been created on a folding chair in a hallway. Please contact us regarding account questions. The words were clean and devoid of drama, which meant the opposite. I imagined the compliance officer with his file-appropriate tie, skimming policy, connecting dots, asking why transfers labelled office incidental smelled like dinners with candlelight and wine pairings. At 4, another buzz. Daniel again. Julia's upset. She thinks I used her. Can you talk to her? I typed and deleted a dozen times, then sent. She's an adult. She can talk to her lawyer. No reply. By evening, the sky, indecisive all day, settled into a soft grey. I came home and cooked, the radio playing someone's nostalgic playlist. Halfway through chopping onions, my phone went again. This time, a call I answered on speaker, hands busy. "Hannah," Daniel said, voice rough, "they suspended me." "You'll sort it out," I said, placing onions in the pan. "The accounts, there were questions. It looks bad, but it isn't." "Of course. Can I come by? We should talk in person." "You don't live here," I said sweetly. "Remember?" Silence. Then, "Julia asked me to leave for a few days. She needs space." "That's convenient," I said. He took a breath. "I'm in the driveway." I turned off the stove and wiped my hands. Through the blinds, I saw him leaning on the car like a man in a mid-price car commercial. He looked smaller. Not physically, just collapsed inward, like someone had folded him wrong. When I opened the door, he straightened. "You look good," he said, which is another way to ask for mercy without using the word. "Hydrangea therapy," I said. "What do you need?" He rubbed his jaw. "I thought you'd hear about the suspension and assume the worst. I wanted to explain." "You should talk to your firm," I said. "They'll love the explanation." "Hannah," he swallowed. "Did you send something?" "It's amazing how you always place me at the center of your episodes," I said. "Even your mistakes orbit me." He winced. Julia got something in her mailbox. Statements. She showed me, furious, and I tried to tell her it wasn't what it looked like, but she... He stopped, choosing a safer word. She was not receptive. "People hate arithmetic until it helps them," I said. His eyes searched my face like I was a map to a nicer country. I moved in 2 suitcases and a hanging bag. She put them on the porch. It started raining. She didn't open the door. "That's the thing about doors," I said. "They work both ways. You walk out of one, another might not open." He took a step closer. "We've been together a decade. Don't just stand there and watch me fall apart." "Who said I'm watching?" I said, and closed the door gently. He didn't ring the bell. Birchwood isn't dramatic on the surface. He went back to his car and sat for a few minutes. I went to the kitchen and stirred the onions again, like I was conducting a small orchestra. When I peered out, he was gone. 2 days is both long and short. Long enough for people to choose sides, short enough that they pretend they didn't. I kept my schedule. I answered emails. I watered plants. I changed the streaming passwords, then texted him. "Friendly heads up. The true crime docuseries you pretend not to watch is on my account. It no longer is." He didn't respond. On the second evening, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Daniel with a backpack and a duffel, hair less styled, tie stuffed in a pocket. He looked like a man who had lost the script and found the stage directions useless. "Julia ended it," he said. "The firm asked me to step back while they review some things. I don't have..." He gestured toward the street, toward everything and nothing. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I said brightly. "Let me help you." His shoulders dropped with relief that made my throat warm, which I resented. Empathy is such a persistent stray cat. I stepped onto the porch, closed the door behind me, and kept walking past him toward the driveway. "Hannah," he said, turning. I popped the trunk of my car with the fob and lifted out a plastic storage crate. Inside, a neat stack of his letters from college, the framed photo from our 3rd anniversary with the crooked candle, and a zipped pouch containing the key to our old apartment, the one we left years ago when we pretended to grow up. Underneath, a folded note. "What is this?" he asked. "It's everything you'll need," I said. "You can store the rest at Lydia's. She always wanted a piece of you." He blinked. "You're throwing me out?" "I think you have the timeline confused," I said. "You left. I drove. You unpacked. I went home. This part is just arithmetic catching up." He paused, processing. "I don't have a place." "There's a motel off Route 9 that smells like pine cleaner and regret," I said. "But it's affordable. And they have waffles in the morning." He stared at me like I'd spoken in a language he didn't know I had learned. "You're enjoying this," he said softly. "I'm enjoying clarity," I replied. "You're welcome to enjoy it too." His jaw worked, then relaxed. "Fine," he said, and lifted the crate. "Do you want to say anything? I mean, about us?" I considered. A decade is a long time to compress into a parking lot sentence. "You should have told me the truth," I said. "Not to save us. To save yourself time. Lies are expensive." He nodded, almost grateful for the math. "Can I at least take a shower?" "No," I said, with a smile so polite it could have hosted a morning show. "But I wish you a refreshing evening." He left without slamming the door of his car, which felt like progress toward civility or just fatigue. When he turned the corner, I leaned against the porch post and exhaled slowly, like a diver reaching the surface and refusing to make a scene about oxygen. Inside, my phone pinged. "Tessa." "Okay, I'm hearing mixed things. Did he move back in? Is Julia pregnant?" I typed, "He is not here. She's not anything that concerns me." "Tessa." "You're so calm, I'd be a puddle." Me. "Practice." I deleted the thread and checked my email. There was one from the firm. "We are continuing review. Thank you for your patience," it said, as if I were connected to their process by a rope. I made tea and took it to the couch, then opened the Notes app. Time to document. "Drop Daniel at Julia's. Tuesday. Envelope delivered. Same evening. Firm email. Wednesday acknowledgement. Suspension. Friday. Return to house seeking sympathy. Friday night. Final porch scene. Sunday evening. Patient smile achieved. Outcome. Independence preserved." The house looked unfamiliar for a moment, then settled back into itself. I took the framed photo of us out of the crate. He'd left it behind in the rush, and set it on the mantel. Not as a shrine, as a warning label. Monday, I went back to work and met the client Claire had assigned me. A mid-size landscaping company that treated invoices like interpretive dance. It felt good to solve a puzzle that didn't wear cologne. At lunch, I sat in the break room, eating a salad and listening to the microwave hum like a tame spaceship. A new text arrived from a number I didn't recognize. "We should talk. I think we got played." Attached, a grainy photo of Julia and Lydia at a cafe, heads bent, faces earnest, the way people look when they're composing a shared story to spread later. I stared at the picture, then laughed quietly. Lydia always does outreach after a storm, collecting details like seashells. She must have told Julia a version in which she was a protective aunt, and I was a cold accountant with a secret grudge. It's fascinating how quickly people apply varnish to their own roles. I replied, "We're all playing something. Some of us just read the rules." That evening, I drove to the store and bought heavier curtains. I liked the light, but I liked control more. On the way back, a car followed me for 3 blocks longer than made sense. I changed lanes, then turned unexpectedly into a pharmacy parking lot. The car continued past. Adrenaline pulsed low, not loud, like a bass line under a song. Back at the house, I installed the curtains and reprogrammed the garage keypad. Then I texted the locksmith to confirm tomorrow's appointment. It rained that night. The sound stitched the dark together, and I let it. Morning brought sun and a smug robin showing off on the fence. The locksmith came at 9 and complimented the porch planter, which made me feel like a person who makes tasteful choices. At 10, Lydia's poodle yipped at the mail truck, and Lydia waved at me with the buoyant posture of someone who believes she's on the right side of the summary. I waved back with the serene face of someone writing the summary. At noon, the firm called. "We'd like to ask a few clarifying questions," a man said, voice measured. "There are patterns we're looking at." "Patterns are my favorite," I said. We spoke in the neutral language of policies and processes. I mentioned small things, dates that matched dinners, purchases that aligned with so-called mentoring sessions. He thanked me. I hung up and sat very still for a minute, not with panic, but with focus. Numbers are clean until someone rubs gravy on them. At 3, Julia texted, "We're done. He used me. Are you happy?" I typed, "I don't do happiness like that. I do balance." No reply. At 4:30, a white SUV paused outside my driveway. I stepped onto the porch. Daniel got out, walked halfway up the path and stopped. "This is not about you and me," he said, hands out. "This is about my life. Everything is going sideways." "Then straighten it," I said. "Help me," he said, voice low. "Just tell the firm it was a misunderstanding." "I never told them anything but arithmetic," I said. "Arithmetic doesn't apologize." He stared at the hydrangea as if it contained advice. "I thought you'd cry and then forgive me." "I thought you'd be original at least once," I said. Something changed in his eyes then. A small click, like a lock giving way. Not rage, not even regret, understanding. He saw me the way I actually am, methodical, unsentimental, loyal only to proof. A bookkeeper of consequences. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." He turned and left, this time without glancing back. The SUV rolled away. I stood on the porch, the new curtains framing the window behind me like theater drapes, and felt the stage adjust to its lead. Night fell clean. I cooked fish with lemon and ate while the news murmured about markets. I placed my phone face down, then turned it over again, because a part of me wanted the next move. It came at 9:15. A message from an unknown contact. "Check your porch mailbox." I frowned, stepped outside, and opened the small brass door. Inside sat a single photo. Daniel and Julia at the oak, his hand on her wrist, her head tilted toward him. In the background, Lydia, reflected in a mirror, phone held at an angle like a hawk's eye. On the back, a note in tidy handwriting. "It's never just one person." I stood under the porch light and let the picture rest in my palm. It wasn't a threat, it was theater. Someone wanted a reaction. I carried the photo inside and set it next to the framed anniversary shot. 2 stories, same mantle. I felt strangely calm. Not triumphant, not sad, just awake. Later, in bed, I considered my next act, not plan, that's too mechanical. Act, movement with intention. I thought about Daniel in some motel with thin towels, about Julia rehearsing her grievances to a friend, about Lydia refreshing her group chat for applause. The thing about numbers is they never complain when you sharpen the pencil and start a new column. I could feel the lines forming, neat and accurate. Sometime after midnight, a short text arrived from Evan across the street. "If you need anything, I'm around." No prying, no performance, just a man who noticed the unusual traffic and chose decency over theater. I typed, "Thanks, all good." He replied with a thumbs up that looked honest. I slept. In the morning, the sun spilled across the kitchen counter like it owned the place. I poured coffee, opened the back door, and watched a squirrel argue with gravity on the fence. My phone was quiet. That was its own message. On my drive to work, a billboard for a personal injury attorney smiled down with teeth too even to be trusted. I laughed, turned up the radio, and mentally scheduled my day. At 9:30, Claire stopped by my cube. "By the way," she said, "the senior slot is opening sooner than expected. Your name came up." Numbers reward patience. People pretend it's luck. "Thanks for the consideration," I said. "Also," she added, leaning in, "you've been glowing. New skincare?" "New math," I said. She laughed, not sure if it was a joke. During lunch, I went for a walk and passed the oak. Through the window, the hostess arranged menus like cards in a trick. I stared at my reflection in the glass and barely recognized the posture. Not harder, just clearer. I imagined walking in, ordering the strawberry tiramisu, and leaving it untouched, a gift to an old self who thought treats could fix patterns. Instead, I kept moving. When I got home, a slim envelope waited on the welcome mat, no return address. Inside, a copy of a formal letter from the firm to Daniel. Pending review, temporary suspension, expectations, ethics training, probationary considerations. It was the language of corporate patients wearing steel-toed boots. Tucked into the fold was a post-it, in the same tidy handwriting as the photo note. "This is bigger than you think." I looked up and across the street. Evan sat on his porch, reading. He lifted his head, caught my eye, then returned to his book. No theatre. I appreciated that. Back inside, I put the letter in a folder labeled Contingencies, then set the folder in a drawer that slid shut with a polite sigh. I checked the locks. I checked the curtains. I poured a glass of water and stood at the window, watching the neighbours walk their evening loops. That's when I saw Julia's SUV turn onto our street, roll past once, then again. On her third pass, she pulled over 3 houses down and parked illegally. She didn't get out. She just sat there, engine humming, face lit by her phone. I stayed where I was and let her look. After 15 minutes, she drove off, probably texting Lydia a verse of the next suburban hymn. The sky turned pink, and for a moment I considered the simple pleasure of sitting on the porch with nothing to guard. But the picture in my mailbox and the letter on my mat said otherwise. Someone, maybe more than one someone, wanted me on stage. If there's going to be a show, I'd better direct it. I pulled out a clean notebook, wrote Ledger at the top, and started a new list. 1. Track who benefits from me looking unstable. 2. Track who benefits from Daniel losing ground. 3. Gently separate Lydia from her sources by feeding her contradictions. 4. Visit Daniel's office after hours using my badge from last year's charity audit tour. Purely public access, nothing risky, just a look. 5. Buy a new pair of running shoes because the next act might involve movement. I closed the notebook and for the first time in days allowed myself a small laugh that didn't hurt. Somewhere out there, a story was being passed around like a casserole. I intended to season it myself. My phone vibrated with a message from a blocked number. "You think you're clever." I stared at it for a long second, then typed back, "No, I'm careful." 3 dots appeared, then nothing. I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and let the house hold me up. The math was elegant now, lines meeting where they should. The next column would be interesting. By Monday, Birchwood had restructured itself like a gossip organism sensing fresh nutrients. The same neighbours who once waved with casual cheer now did it with the subtle curiosity of field researchers. My recycling bin seemed to get more attention than usual, as if empty wine bottles held the confessions they were too polite to request directly. I arrived home from work to find a lemon pound cake on my porch. No note, just the unspoken message that sugar substitutes for sincerity. I set it on the counter, sliced one piece, and tasted a neighbourhood's attempt at apology. It was dry, predictable. At the firm, whispers travelled faster than memos. Daniel's suspension was no longer rumour. It was documented procedure. His name came up in the copier room, at lunch, even in the elevator. I listened when necessary, nodded when expected, and occasionally said, "That's unfortunate." My tone was neutral enough to pass for sympathy, but the subtext was math, cause and effect. Claire caught me by the coffee machine. "Rough week for your husband," she said carefully. "You holding up?" "I'm an accountant," I said. "We process losses every quarter." She blinked, unsure whether to laugh. That was fine. Ambiguity keeps people at a comfortable distance. By Wednesday, Julia appeared at the grocery store. Of all the aisles, she chose the one I was in, spices and sauces. Her hair was perfect, lipstick too bright for noon. I caught her reflection in the metal shelves before she spoke. "Hannah," she said, like she was practicing forgiveness in public. "Can we talk?" I examined a jar of paprika, as if the correct choice might change the course of the conversation. "Sure," I said, "but I left my sympathy coupons at home." She folded her arms. "You didn't have to humiliate him." Whatever happened between us, you could have handled it privately. Oh, believe me, I did handle it privately, I said. You just didn't like the results. His career is over. Careers end for many reasons, some moral, some mathematical. Her voice sharpened. You're cruel. No, I said, setting the jar back neatly. I'm efficient. She stared, eyes bright with something I refused to label. You think this makes you the winner? There were never prizes, I said, just lessons. When I pushed my cart away, she muttered something, soft, clipped, but I didn't turn back. A true victory doesn't require an audience. That night I found a note slipped under my door. Anonymous, though anonymity in Birchwood is as believable as modesty at a beauty pageant. You've made enemies. Watch your step. Written in block letters, cut from a notepad that probably said something like, live, laugh, love, across the top. I pinned it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a calculator. Some warnings are too decorative to ignore. Thursday evening, Claire assigned me an overtime audit at a local business. Their office happened to share a building with Daniel's firm. I didn't plan it, but I didn't decline it either. By 10 p.m., the hallways were quiet. My heels echoed softly as I carried a stack of client forms to the copier. The firm's glass door was closed, but the lights inside were dimly on. Security lights, maybe. Through the glass, I could see the framed motivational posters Daniel had once laughed at. Integrity is the currency of trust. Irony has a good sense of placement. I scanned the room until my eyes caught a familiar object on a side desk, his mug. World's best financial advisor. I'd bought it as a joke years ago. Now it was a relic. The cleaning staff passed by behind me, pushing a cart. Working late? One asked. Always, I said, smiling. Inside the copier tray, I slid a single blank page after my audit copies and typed a note later, in invisible ink only visible under light. Trust audited, balance pending. It wasn't evidence. It was art. The next morning, Daniel called. I know you were there. Where? At the office. Someone saw you. Hard to keep secrets in a glass building, I said. What's the problem? He hesitated. You're enjoying this. I'm occupied, I said. Enjoyment implies spare time. He exhaled, defeated. Julia says you scared her at the store. I offered paprika advice. Terrifying stuff. Hannah, you're becoming someone else. Correction, I said. You're just meeting me without filters. He hung up. I added that to my notes. Thursday, Daniel, denial stage complete. Friday night, Lydia hosted another, casual gathering. Casual in Birchwood means catered appetizers and subtle interrogations. I attended, partly to confirm I still controlled the narrative. Her living room was filled with people pretending not to stare at me. Lydia fluttered toward me, pearls swinging like punctuation. Darling, you look radiant. Single life suits you. I wouldn't call it single, I said. More streamlined. Oh, how modern, she cooed. Tessa approached, wine glass already half empty. We've all been saying how strong you are. Daniel must feel awful. He's developing character, I said. It's overdue. Laughter, awkward, scattered. That's how polite society processes discomfort, a chuckle per ounce of guilt. Halfway through the night, Julia arrived uninvited. The tension was instant, deliciously cinematic. She smiled too brightly and kissed Lydia's cheek. I came to clear the air. Lydia, delighted by potential scandal, clasped her hands. Wonderful idea. I sipped my wine and waited. Julia turned to me. Hannah, I just want everyone to know this isn't what it looks like. Good, I said, because it looks tragic. She flushed. He's ruined and you're proud. I'm thorough, I corrected. Pride is inefficient. Her voice rose. You exposed him out of spite. I exposed numbers, I said calmly. Numbers have no motive. The room hummed with fascination. Lydia's eyes gleamed like someone filming mentally. Julia stepped closer. You can't just destroy people. Don't flatter him, I said softly. He destroyed himself. I just balanced the account. A pause, long, sharp. Then Julia tossed her drink, narrowly missing me, staining Lydia's rug instead. Gasps everywhere. I smiled at Lydia. Add vinegar and baking soda, I advised. When I left, the cool air outside felt cleaner than it had in months. Behind me, voices tangled in excitement. Gossip would feast tonight. The next day, Lydia appeared at my door under the pretense of returning a dish. You've certainly stirred things, she said. Idle water breeds mosquitoes, I said. She lowered her voice. Julia's threatening to press charges for harassment. For what? I asked. Public speaking. She says you followed her. I live here, I reminded her. She drives by. Math again. Lydia sighed, frustrated by my refusal to feed her narrative. People are saying you planned all this. People say lots of things, I said. You'd know. That evening, I sat in my office, reviewing numbers for a client but mostly replaying the night's laughter in my head. Each whisper, each glance. It wasn't cruelty that satisfied me. It was control. For once, the equation was mine. At 10, my phone vibrated with an unknown message. You think you've won, but it's still my story. No name, but tone has fingerprints. Daniel. I typed, stories belong to whoever edits them best. He didn't reply. Saturday morning, I took a walk. Birchwood was crisp, trimmed, deceptively peaceful. Behind fences, people murmured. Cars idled. Somewhere a lawnmower started, its hum steady, comforting. When I reached the small lake at the end of the cul-de-sac, I saw Daniel's car parked crookedly near the curb. He was sitting inside, staring at the water. I approached slowly, each step deliberate. You shouldn't be here, I said. I lost everything, he murmured, eyes forward. They suspended my license. Julia called the firm and said I manipulated her accounts. She gave them the papers. Oh, I said. So loyalty wasn't mutual. He laughed bitterly. You did this. You pulled every string. Strings don't exist without puppets, I said. He turned finally, eyes tired. Was it worth it? Yes, I said simply. Balance achieved. He looked away, shoulders slumped. You'll end up alone. Maybe, I said, but I'll be accurate. When he drove off, tires crunching softly on gravel, I felt something shift. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just confirmation that the formula was complete. That night, I stood by my window, watching porch lights blink across Birchwood. In a dozen living rooms, my name was probably being spoken, part villain, part legend. The suburbs love duality. It keeps things interesting. I poured a glass of wine and whispered to no one in particular, numbers don't lie. In the distance, thunder rumbled, perfect timing. The balance sheet of my life was no longer symmetrical, but it was clean. And somewhere behind the drawn curtains of identical houses, the story of Hannah Lewis was becoming neighborhood scripture. They'd gossip for years. They'd misquote. They'd speculate. And every version would make me stronger. The storm started just after midnight, a restless drizzle that escalated into something angrier, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the street shimmer beneath the lamplight. Birchwood always looked too neat, like the kind of neighborhood that rehearsed its disasters. When the first flash of lightning hit, I noticed the car. Parked across the street, headlights off, the kind of silhouette that wanted to be seen but not identified. Daniel had always loved metaphors. Apparently, he'd graduated to living them. I let him wait. 5 minutes, 10. I made tea, added honey, and finally stepped onto the porch. The rain turned my hair into damp curls, my robe clinging slightly to my arms. You can either come talk, I called out, or continue auditioning for a mystery series. Your choice. The car door opened and Daniel emerged, hooded jacket, damp around the edges. You weren't answering my calls. I was busy, I said. Balance sheets, conscience, same category. He crossed the street, rain slicking his hair. You told my firm I misuse client funds. They're filing a report. I told no one anything untrue. You've destroyed my career. You did that with a signature and a receipt, I said. He clenched his jaw. Julia won't even talk to me. She said you sent her proof I stole her money. I sipped tea. Did you? He hesitated. That's not the point. Ah, I said. Then it's definitely the point. He stepped closer, water running down his sleeve. You're enjoying this. I'm awake for the first time in years, I said. That's different. The rain thickened between us. He looked like a man trying to remember who he'd been before gravity took interest. Why couldn't you just let it go? Because letting go implies holding on first, I said. You dropped us long before I noticed. He shook his head and turned away. You've changed. Finally, he left without another word, the car splashing through puddles as it pulled away. I watched until the taillights dissolved into the rain. By morning, Birchwood was half underwater. News spread fast. Fallen tree on elm, power outage on maple, and, because small towns thrive on patterns, rumors that Daniel had shown up at my door, yelling. Lydia called by 8, voice sugar-dipped. I just wanted to make sure you're safe, dear. People are saying things. People love saying things, I said. It makes them feel involved. She chuckled nervously. Julia's been driving around too. You didn't hear that from me. Of course not, I said. That afternoon, at work, Claire cornered me in the hallway. Everything okay? She asked softly. Perfect, I said. Just a little weather. At 5, I took the elevator down, stepped into the parking garage and froze. Daniel's car again, 2 rows over. My pulse didn't race, but my brain sharpened, numbers falling into sequence. I walked to my car calmly, opened the door, and started the engine. He pulled out behind me as I exited the garage. No headlights this time, just distance. Subtle, predictable. 2 turns later, I decided to adjust the equation. Instead of heading home, I veered toward the industrial district, where streets were wide and mostly empty after 6. I could feel his presence behind me, steady as a metronome. At the next intersection, I braked hard, turned abruptly into a side road, and stopped beneath a flickering streetlight. Daniel's car hesitated, then rolled forward. I stepped out, raincoat flaring slightly in the wind. You're terrible at this, I said as he got out, water pooling at his feet. He looked startled. At what? Following people. You leave gaps too even. You brake like you're in a manual. I wanted to talk, he said. Then knock next time. It's less cinematic. He rubbed his forehead. I thought if I gave you time, you'd what? Win me back? Rewrite the plot? His silence answered for him. I walked a few paces closer, voice low. You should know something, Daniel. Every time you shadow me, every time you try to reclaim control, you prove my point. Which is? That you never understood partnership, I said. You understood possession. Lightning flashed again, highlighting the hollows under his eyes. He looked smaller, softer, like a man learning humility through exhaustion. I'm not your enemy, he said quietly. No, I agreed. You're just my favorite case study. I turned and walked back to my car. When I glanced in the mirror, he was still standing there, rain pouring around him, motionless as punctuation. By the time I reached home, the storm had thinned into drizzle. I poured a drink, not for nerves, but ceremony. The first stage of collapse was complete. 2 days later, Birchwood gathered for its annual neighborhood charity auction. The kind of event where people donate used golf clubs and congratulate themselves for civic virtue. Lydia had begged me to attend. Show them you're above the drama, she'd said, which, translated from Lydia speak, meant be present so we can all watch you breathe. I wore black, professional, sharp, impossible to misread. Conversation stopped when I entered, then resumed with the energy of electrical hum. Daniel arrived 15 minutes later, alone. No Julia. His suit was rumpled, his smile rehearsed. He hovered near the back like a misfiled document. I pretended not to notice until Lydia called for attention. "Before we start the auction," she chirped, "I'd like to thank everyone for supporting the community, even through challenging times." Her glance flicked between us like a spotlight. Perfect. As the event rolled on, I stepped outside for air. Moments later, I heard footsteps. "Daniel." "Hannah," he said. "Please, 5 minutes." 2, I corrected. He exhaled. "I need help. They're investigating my license. Julia's turned everything against me. If you could just tell them I wasn't acting alone." "Ah," I said, "so you want me to perjure myself to balance your ego?" His expression hardened. "I built that career." "With borrowed money," I said, "and borrowed loyalty. Do you really want to see me lose everything?" "You're assuming I haven't already." Before he could reply, the glass doors behind us swung open. Julia stepped out, mascara perfect, smile weaponized. "There you are," she said to him. Daniel's face drained of pretense. "Julia, I didn't—" "Save it," she snapped. "Your firm called me. They said the documents you forgot to mention came from me. You set me up." He looked between us, desperate. "She's lying," he said to me. "Obviously," I said dryly. "You'd never lie." Julia turned to me. "You think this is justice? You're destroying everyone around you." "Not everyone," I said. "Just the deserving subset." Her eyes blazed. "You're sick. And you're predictable," I said. She slapped me, hard enough to sting, soft enough to seem impulsive. The crowd inside gasped, drawn to the sound like moths to heat. I didn't flinch. I looked at her, calm, steady. "Feel better?" I asked. Her breath shook. "You're a monster." "I'm organized," I said. "Monsters are messy." Security staff hurried out, voices polite but firm. The scene was already making its rounds through whispers. Cameras clicked. Lydia's eyes sparkled behind the glass. She was thrilled. When they guided Julia away, I adjusted my hair, smiled at the nearest onlooker, and said, "Well, that was lively." The rest of the night felt oddly electric. People avoided my gaze, yet couldn't stop watching. Daniel left early, face pale, reputation folding inward. Later, at home, I sat on the floor surrounded by silence that felt earned. On the table lay my phone, screen glowing. New messages. Unknown. That was impressive. Me. Who is this? Unknown. Someone who appreciates efficiency. No further replies, just a small tremor of curiosity beneath my ribs. Sunday morning, the local news site ran a photo. Julia mid-slap, me composed. The headline, "Drama at Birchwood Charity Gala." The comments section was a goldmine of assumptions. "She always seemed too calm," one said. "You can't trust women who smile like accountants." I laughed. If only they knew how accurate that was. That evening, Evan from across the street knocked, holding a cup of coffee. "You okay?" he asked. "Never better," I said. "Just thought you might want company. People talk." "Let them," I said, but I invited him in anyway. He sat, silent but solid, sipping his coffee while I worked through receipts. Sometimes, presence doesn't need dialogue. When he left, he paused at the door. "You don't have to handle everything alone." "I know," I said. "I just prefer it." Hours later, as I locked up, headlights flickered through the curtains. Daniel again, stopped, idling, then driving off. Not confrontation this time. Observation. I stood at the window until the dark reclaimed the street. The next phase had begun. Daniel wasn't just cornered now, he was circling, and every good chase ends where it started. Only this time, I was the one drawing the map. By Monday, Birchwood was no longer whispering. It was buzzing. Someone had uploaded a clip of the charity gala incident to the neighborhood Facebook page. The caption read, "When accountants snap." 100 comments deep, half defended me, half dissected me, Either way, I had become entertainment. I didn't delete the post, let them watch. Visibility is a shield when you know how to wear it. At work, Claire pulled me into her office. "Do you need time off?" she asked, careful tone, HR-adjacent concern. "Not at all," I said. "Work is stabilizing." She looked at me, searching for cracks. "You're sure?" I smiled. "Absolutely. I balance faster under pressure." She sighed. "You're something, Hannah." "Mathematics," I said. "It builds resilience." The day unfolded cleanly. I worked through audits, ate lunch at my desk, avoided news updates. Outside, the weather cooled, the air crisp enough to feel like new paper. That night, I returned home to find a note taped to my door. "You think you're untouchable." It wasn't signed, though the handwriting was Daniel's. Neat, looping, too confident for threats. I peeled it off carefully, folded it into a perfect square, and tucked it into a file marked documentation. Revenge isn't chaos, it's record-keeping. Wednesday morning, Evan caught me outside while I was watering the hydrangeas. "Saw someone near your house last night," he said. "Grey sedan. Drove by twice." "Probably Daniel," I said lightly. "He misses the HOA-approved landscaping." Evan frowned. "You should call someone." "I have," I said. "My lawyer loves paperwork almost as much as I do." He hesitated. "Just be careful." "I'm precise," I said. "It's safer than careful." He nodded, though I could see the worry settle behind his eyes. That evening, I set up my camera system. Motion sensors, time-stamped feeds, cloud backups. If Daniel wanted to haunt my perimeter, he'd get documented doing it. Every angle covered, every second stored. He was meticulous, but I was better. 2 nights later, motion alert at 2:11 a.m., I checked my phone. Front yard, silhouette, unmistakable stance. He walked up the driveway, paused by the porch light, then left. No damage, just presence, a ghost checking his haunting rights. I sent him a text. "Smile next time. You're on camera." No response. But the next night, no visit. Proof that subtlety still worked better than shouting. Saturday brought the neighborhood yard sale, a Birchwood tradition. People selling pieces of lives they'd grown out of. I joined for optics, setting up a table with old decor, cookbooks, a couple of Daniel's framed certificates. By mid-morning, Lydia strolled over, pretending surprise. "Oh, selling memories?" she asked sweetly. "Just freeing up shelf space," I said. "Extra weight adds up." Her smile twitched, but she moved on. I sold everything within 2 hours, Daniel's certificates last. A teenager bought them for $1, laughing at the financial advisor title. I watched the papers disappear down the street like confetti at a wake. By noon, Birchwood had new gossip. Daniel had been seen arguing with Julia outside a cafe. She'd thrown coffee at him. Apparently, he'd demanded money, claimed she owed him. He'd shouted something about payback. Witnesses said he looked unhinged. That afternoon, Julia called me. "He's blaming me for everything," she said, voice trembling. "He says we both got played." "Maybe you did," I said. "Some of us just read the fine print." "Hannah, he's not stable." "He's always been consistent," I said. "You're just seeing the original formula." She exhaled shakily. "You win. Congratulations." "It's not a competition," I said. "It's arithmetic." When she hung up, I sat quietly for a long time, tracing circles on the table with my fingertip. The satisfaction felt muted, heavy but clean, like the silence after final applause. That night, as I was locking up, motion sensor again. Backyard this time. I checked the feed, blurry shape near the fence, too tall for an animal. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, raincoat zipped. The grass was damp, air cool. "Daniel," I said, loud enough for the camera to hear, "you're really committed to late-night cardio." No reply, but a shadow shifted near the trees. "Come out," I said. "You're not invisible." He stepped into view, face pale under the security light. "You've ruined me," he said quietly. "I've revealed you," I corrected. He took a step closer. "You sent the firm those documents. You sent Julia the statements. You turned everyone against me." "Everyone did the math," I said. "I just provided the numbers." His voice broke slightly. "I have nothing left." "You have accountability," I said. "That's something new for you." He stared at me, rain glistening in his hair. "What happened to you?" "I stopped forgiving you." For a moment, neither of us moved. The security light hummed, insects danced around it, and Birchwood's perfect quiet stretched taut between us. Then headlights flashed from the street, Evan's truck pulling into his driveway. Daniel flinched, turned, and walked away fast, disappearing into the dark. I went back inside, locked every door, saved the camera footage, labeled it Encounter Number 3, evidence, time-stamped and pristine. Sunday morning arrived bright and cold, the kind of air that pretends to erase the past. I brewed coffee, watched joggers pass, and checked my phone. Messages flooded in, co-workers, neighbors, even Claire. The firm had released an internal statement. Daniel Lewis, permanently terminated. License revoked pending formal proceedings. Attached was a news blurb. Local financial advisor under investigation for ethical violations. No charges, no sensationalism. Just a line that would follow him forever. I closed my phone and exhaled through a smile that wasn't triumph, just conclusion. By afternoon, Julia called again. "He came to my house," she said, voice shaking. "He banged on the door, shouting about you. I called the police." "You did the right thing," I said. "They said they'd warn him. You should be careful." "I'm precise," I reminded her. "He's predictable." That night, I sat by the window, a blanket over my lap, tea cooling beside me. The security lights flickered once, then steadied. The camera feed stayed empty. For the first time in months, I felt the faint pulse of peace. Not happiness, not relief, just balance. Then, at 9:04 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Check your driveway." I stood, heart measured, steps calm. Outside, under the porch light, sat Daniel's car, empty. On the windshield, one envelope. Inside, a single folded sheet. "You win." No signature, no dramatics, just 2 words. I folded it carefully, pressed it flat against my palm, and looked at my reflection in the glass. Maybe I had won. Maybe I'd simply finished the math. Either way, the equation was balanced. And as the porch light glowed steady above me, I realized something both thrilling and quietly terrifying. I didn't feel sorry. Not for him. Not for Julia. Not even for the woman I'd been before. She was gone. Replaced by someone sharper, steadier, harder to read. Someone Daniel should have counted more carefully. Monday morning started too still. Birchwood looked like a photograph. Trimmed lawns, mailboxes waiting like polite sentinels, and the faint hum of sprinklers, working overtime to maintain the illusion of perfection. On the surface, everything gleamed. Beneath it, tension moved like a quiet current. Daniel hadn't been seen since leaving the note on my windshield. No calls, no messages. Julia had vanished from the gossip circuit, which for her was the equivalent of a personality transplant. Lydia, starved of new updates, had started inventing her own. One version had Daniel moving to Arizona to find himself. Another had him checking into a retreat that specialized in rebuilding men's integrity. Birchwood preferred metaphors to facts. They sounded more poetic in book club discussions. At work, Claire pulled me aside before our weekly meeting. "The partners reviewed your file," she said, smiling carefully. "They want to promote you. Senior accountant, effective next month." "That's quick," I said. "Your precision saved us during the last audit," she said. "And your composure. People notice that. It's rare." Composure. The word lingered. People mistake silence for peace. But really, it's compression. everything folded neatly into a small, efficient space. By evening, the sky lowered into a dull bruise of clouds. I drove home through light rain, windshield wipers keeping time like a metronome. My phone vibrated once, an unknown number flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw it, the porch light flickering, faint movement behind the glass. My camera feed hadn't sent alerts, but the system occasionally lagged. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering over Evan's number. Then I paused. If Daniel wanted to finish something, better now than later. I stepped out, heels clicking softly against the wet pavement. "You're not subtle, Daniel," I said, voice steady. "If you're inside, say so." The front door creaked open an inch. He stood in the hallway, damp jacket clinging to his shoulders, eyes shadowed and sharp. "You changed the locks," he said. "Consistency isn't my strong suit lately," I said. "Neither is hospitality." He took one step forward. "You got what you wanted. I lost everything. Isn't that enough?" "Enough is subjective," I said. He laughed, a thin, cracked sound. "You ruined me for sport." "For balance," I corrected. "There's a difference." His gaze darted around the room, the stripped shelves, the absence of his photos, the life he'd walked out of now catalogued into neat emptiness. "You're not the woman I married." "I was never the woman you imagined," I said. "You mistook patience for weakness." He clenched his fists. "You don't even care that you've become what you hate." "Oh, I care," I said softly. "I've just learned to value efficiency over morality." He stepped closer. "You wanted revenge. Congratulations, you're the villain now." "Finally," I said, "something accurate in your mouth." For a moment we stood inches apart, quiet, charged. The air felt too thick, too aware. Then, from outside, headlights flashed across the curtains. Evan's truck pulling in again, punctual as conscience. Daniel froze. Like the spell broke, he turned toward the door. "You tell anyone I came here and I'll—" "You'll what?" I asked, voice light. "Embarrass yourself further?" He hesitated, then exhaled. "You'll regret this someday, Hannah." "No," I said. "You will." He left, the door swinging slightly before clicking shut behind him. I stayed where I was until I heard his car fade down the street. Evan knocked a moment later, concern etched into his features. "Everything all right?" "Storm," I said simply. "Nothing serious." He nodded, unsure, then lingered. "If you ever need help, anything, just ask." "I will," I said, "but I probably won't." After he left, I sat at the kitchen table, palms flat against the smooth wood. The quiet pressed in again, thicker now, almost companionable. I opened my laptop, logged into the security footage and replayed the last hour. Every angle had captured him. Entry, conversation, exit, proof, clean and time-stamped. I copied the file to a drive, labeled it Final Ledger. Insurance, in case Daniel decided to invent another story. The next morning, I woke early, the world tinted silver from overnight rain. I brewed coffee and opened the curtains. Across the street, Lydia was already outside, watering flowers that didn't need it, pretending not to glance my way. I waved. She waved back, curious and cautious, an amateur anthropologist observing the creature she'd been gossiping about for months. At work, the day felt unreal in its normalcy. Spreadsheets, signatures, soft chatter. By noon, the official promotion email arrived. Effective immediately. Claire hugged me, co-workers congratulated me, and someone brought cupcakes. I ate one, smiling politely, as if the sweetness didn't taste faintly like irony. That evening, I walked through the neighborhood, umbrella angled against drizzle. Birchwood glowed with porch lights and polite domestic noise, laughter leaking through windows, the smell of dinner, the soundtrack of suburban success. Halfway down the block, I spotted Julia's SUV parked under a streetlight. She was sitting inside, window cracked, expression unreadable. When she noticed me, she got out. I wanted to see for myself, she said. See what? That you're still standing, she said. After all this. Gravity's consistent, I said. It helps. She studied me. He called me last night, said he was coming here. I'm aware. Did he hurt you? No. She hesitated. He's leaving town. Said there's nothing left for him here. Good, I said. Let him haunt a new zip code. Her mouth twisted, somewhere between guilt and admiration. You really did it, didn't you? You broke him. I adjusted him to market value, I said. She gave a short laugh, not out of humor but disbelief. You scare me. Join the club, I said. She got back into her SUV, paused before driving off. If he calls you again, ignore him. He's finished. I nodded. He always was. When she was gone, I stood in the rain, the quiet returning heavier than before. It wasn't loneliness. It was aftermath, the silence that comes when every thread of a story finally tightens. Back home, I changed clothes, poured wine, and sat by the window again. Birchwood looked perfect, symmetrical, harmless. My phone buzzed once. A final message, no contact name. You win. I smiled faintly. Yes, I whispered. I do. Outside, thunder rolled softly, like applause heard from far away. I lifted the glass, watching the reflection of the storm ripple across the surface. Every calculation, every move had brought me here. A woman once underestimated, now unmeasurable. I closed my eyes for a moment, not in peace, but in recognition. Some equations don't need solving, they just need closure. When I opened them again, the sky cracked with light, and for the first time in months I laughed, a low, dry sound that belonged entirely to me.